Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Running behind a little bit this week, during this week, but get there. California is burning down, and we don't have clean water in Richmond, so it's been an interesting week, to say the least. Let's see. Make sure everybody's in their right spot. We're at page 152. We are down to the last, 7 pages of this book by Terryl Whitlatch. We got ourselves a Captain Paramerica. To sketch today from her book. So looking forward to that. See if I can't get it to fit in this kind of area right here. And this is where triangulation can come in handy. That should work okay. Make sure it fits on the page, right? It's primary concern here. It's a strangely shaped drawing. So, yeah. Good morning. Yeah, still no clean water in Richmond, so dealing with that. We had a pump failure at the water treatment plant the other day. Well, I guess we're on day 4 now, so 4 days ago. And caused a drop in pressure, which cut off water service to a lot of people, obviously. And then it also because of that drop in pressure, I guess it introduces or allows bacteria to mix in with the fresh water. And so when we don't have drinkable water, had pretty low pressure up until yesterday evening. I did still get water, but I still had low pressure. I have like a little, it's called a distiller. It's basically, it boils water and pumps it into a little tube and then spits out the fresh water. I've had that for a while, so I was just making sure I'm topped off with that, so I don't run low. But I've been talking to some of the students; they don't even have like water at all. City's been set up like distribution points for it, but they run out pretty quick. So it's a big giant mess, and saw a news report. Apparently they were cited by some inspectors 2 years ago that they had significant problems in their system and should get that fixed. And so they did put in new pumps, I think 2 days ago, so the day after it happened. But then they had electrical panel failure, which caused additional problems. And so, earliest estimates for having clean water, in the city is maybe tomorrow. And some are saying probably not even tomorrow. So it's an interesting set of problems we're suddenly having here. Some people, I don't know if this is accurate necessarily, but some people were pointing out online that all the surrounding counties, A, they've got water, clean water, and B, they all of their heads of their water departments are all civil engineers. Ours is, I guess, is a background in customer service. Which seems like a problem. So that's the latest here. But hopefully you'll get it fixed. It's amazing they've it's taking this long, and that they weren't that prepared. The report I saw on YouTube, they showed some images of some of the concern points, I guess, that the report revealed, and yeah, they're pretty looked egregious anyway to me. I mean, maybe they weren't, but they certainly looked like a problem to me. It's like rusted out large connections and a bunch of other things. But it's not like, this isn't like it's not the biggest city in the United States, but it is a capital of the state. It's fairly sizable. It's an old city. It's been around a long time. Especially relative to the United States. Not as long as Athens, obviously, but people have been colonists settled here. I think was a little over 300, 400 years ago. It's one of the oldest cities in the United States. It's not the oldest, but it's one of the oldest. And then that they would let, let's see, so the tail doesn't go out quite that far. It goes out, so it's shorter than this length, or something like that. And, they would allow this, because it's just, with the storm, we had a winter storm that came through, but it wasn't like, the worst storm I've ever seen in my life. It's not like they don't get winter storms here. They happen on the regular. This isn't like South Carolina or Georgia or Florida or something like that, where they don't get those storms as much, if at all. So yeah, so we'll have to see what they figure out. So yeah, Athens, old city, right? People have been living there a very long time. I mean, there may have been Native Americans or something living in this area. Um, yeah, like the river here is the James. It's named for King James, whose probably most famous achievement, or it was his advocacy for the translation of the Bible. His version of the Bible in English is probably what he's most known for. So the King James version. So that's what the river here is named for, and so it's all all this goes way back. Hey, Bosch, you coming over here? Yeah. Can I have your blanket? Alright, we got our little tail sheath on here. Yeah, so it's most cities in the United States aren't quite that old, but you do get a handful on the East Coast that have some of that age, relatively speaking. Though there are places like Mexico City, which was a giant Aztec city originally, where it was located at. So I don't know how far back that history goes for that location. I guess there used to be a giant lake there or something too. Alright, we got Captain Paramerica here. Parasaurolophus, or however you pronounce that, as a dinosaur. How are we doing for time? 13 minutes in? We'll ink him first, and then there's like a page of gesture drawings off to the side that we can fill in some of this space with. Where the dog went. Maybe get some water, or go back to bed. It's interesting some of the shadow choices she makes here, because looking at her drawing here, and I don't know what this shadow is for. But we're going to go ahead and ink this little character in here. We can't zoom in a little bit better up top. All the way this way. There we go. Alright, pull out the calligraphy pen for the start of this. I like to play around with that. Hello, Bosch. Welcome back. You want to come lay down? Good morning, everybody popping in. Anybody started a active morning study project out there? Good morning. Running a little bit behind here this morning. I need to start getting my focus on a little bit earlier in the morning, especially with schools starting up next week and meetings this week and all that. Maybe set my alarm rather than just getting up when I wake up would be an optimal thing to do. For those who popping in, we're dealing with an odd emergency here. It's not really, been harmful or anything to myself at the very least. I think it's definitely impacted a lot of people, but I'm fine. But out here in Richmond, out on the East Coast, so not California, obviously, with their major disaster, but we haven't had clean water in Richmond this is day 4, so I think by this afternoon it'll be for full 48 hours since the situation occurred. I found out about it via text from the university's police system that they sent out. Otherwise, I might not have known about it. So I don't really pay that much attention to local news. I might have been blissfully unaware. Luckily, my water pressure is up, so I don't have to. Yesterday, I had to boil some water to finally take a shower. But I haven't been able to. I mean, I could have done, I guess, that earlier, but I just kept hoping the water would come back on and I wouldn't have to do a sponge bath. Started a blur. I mean, like a rough sketch or something. Let's get this thing over here so I can rest on it. The fire out west is just kind of insane. But it's a mix of a lot of different problems. So basically, I guess people have kind of noticed that probably would occur there at some point. Regardless of whatever other conditions, because it's just has to catch the wind just right. It'll blow the fire, right up into that area really easily. And so it's kind of been like a known thing. It's like California is a desert, so it's dry for the most part. And there's a lot of people living in an area where it's not really an environment for a lot of people to live in. And people like to think that they can control those environments, and they keep being proven wrong. It's like you can accomplish a lot, but um, like, there's a lot you can do with an environment to kind of make it more habitable, but that doesn't stop hurricanes, and it doesn't stop wildfires. I know some people are arguing about certain environmental regulations. There's like they haven't been clearing out the brush as part of like an effort to preserve the forests in a natural condition. Which if you look into the history of forests, like there's forests that actually they rely on fires to breed. Like there's certain trees and their pine cones don't open unless they're put under extreme heat. And something to kind of factor in to the equation that the environment is built around. Yeah, well, a lot of people want to live there, right? That's the dream state, right? They made ideal living there as like a part of their marketing. They got Hollywood and animation and all that in that area. All these famous actors, and part of what caused the original people to move out there was the creation of Hollywood. So people kind of went out there because it was kind of open to new things back the 30s and 40s. And probably earlier than that, kind of get away from the New York movie scene at the time. I'd be free to do what they wanted to, and then you had fairly stable weather, so it's not like New York City where you've got major winter storms coming in and lots of rain and other things that can kind of get in the way of a production. It's like it doesn't get that cold. It doesn't get, well, I guess LA can get really hot in the summer, but go a little bit further south down to San Diego or Escondido area, and like they have really nice weather like year round. It's like in the mid 70s, low 70s, all year round, and fairly dry. So they get a lot of fog down there. And I was born in California, Oceanside. Yeah, well, that's the thing is like they shouldn't be surprised. It's funny because ostensibly, California is a very kind of left wing state, so they should be like, not allowing people to build in some of these areas that they've been building in. Ostensibly, they want to preserve and protect the environment, but a lot of that's just done on a superficial level, which happens pretty often. They call it lip service. It's the term people like to use. And so I don't know why they're surprised. It's like building a house right next to the ocean in Florida. It's like there's a hurricane's gonna hit sometime. You don't know when, but but it will. Now they're yelling at insurance companies for canceling their protections there a little while ago, and one of the things that California did that caused that directly was they froze insurance rates. So insurance companies could no longer price based off of risk. And so yeah, but because that's what insurance is for. Insurance isn't like a guarantee of safety, or it's not like a guarantee of service. What it is, it's a risk. It's a bet on risk. It's a gamble on how well risk, what kind of risks you have. And so if they look at an area and they're like, well, it floods here every time there's a hurricane, we're going to want a lot more money to cover that bet, because it's very likely that it will happen. That's what insurance is for. So people don't get about like health insurance, at least in the United States. It's like it's not supposed to be health care, it's supposed to be insurance. Against, it's a bet against you pay lower rates in order to say that I have a lower risk of getting X, Y, or Z problem. And then the insurance company looks at you and says, yeah, we agree with your bet that you are not likely to need our services, and so we're willing to give you this lower rate. Whereas if you are more likely to need those services, then they're going to need more money to cover that, because they're not taking in enough money to cover everybody's service. That's not what it is. There are like shared health groups in the United States. It's one of the exceptions that got carved out under the Affordable Care Act, where basically people can join these groups. Most of them are based around churches, I think, or religions at least, or faith of some kind. But basically it's like a shared medical fee bank account, so everyone pays a certain amount in, and then they kind of group votes on any sense, like they claim to want one thing, around environment protections, and then they build like giant houses, giant houses in environmentally tenuous areas. They'll fly their private jets around, and exorbitant spending and all that stuff, while claiming to want other things. And hypocrisy is pretty obvious to most people. But yeah, it's kind of a major tragedy. Just like everything's burning down, and it seems like from some of the things people are talking about that it may have been preventable, though. So we'll see what happens out there. But we have our own problems here in Richmond again with the whole water thing. It's just it's crazy. Like, thankfully, I think very few people have died out in those fires. So I think I've heard of one, maybe. Yeah, it's died directly of the fires. Um, so yeah, at least there's that. It's not like I mean, it's a terrible thing for the properties people had, but at least they're getting out with their lives. There'll probably be a few more that we'll find out about, but yeah, it's kind of one of those interesting things about the United States where they'll have like a disaster like this, but nobody, almost nobody, dies from it. Whereas you get that same disaster in some other country, and there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of dead people. It's like that hurricane that hit Haiti a number of years ago that killed like 250,000 people or something. It had to do with like the way I guess their homes are constructed there. Everything just kind of fell down on top of everybody. We're trying to move on to the next page. A little love on the shield. Alright, so this is page 152. Almost there. Hard to believe I'd go through these books a lot faster when I was just I was doing a bunch of ballpoint pen sketches or color pencil sketches. And that kind of made it go a lot faster. But I decided to start practicing this inking thing, along with limiting my time, and definitely slowed down the progress on this one. All right, let's get this scooted over. So now we've got a bunch of gesture sketches by her up there. So the same character, I want to fill in kind of this gap area up here. Let's scoot over. Let's start over here. Set up. Good morning, everybody coming in. Let's see, I guess I should put the shield on there. Curious to see how many of these I can fit on here. I think we hit about 10, so I'm trying to get as many as I can on here in the next 10 minutes, and then we'll ink them. And then that should bring us to a finish for today. Yeah, I've got a bunch of meetings today. We got new faculty coming on, and they of course did not get any significant orientation from anybody. Which is funny. I'm sure they had to do like some online bias training or something like that, but how to set up your course or get access to your materials or any of that necessary stuff did not happen, but I'm sure all the compliance stuff did. That's a classic example of incentives driving what we do. It was similar with me. Like, there's a lot I just was not informed about. It's like they kind of just expected me to know certain things structurally about the school when I did not, and no one told me what's going on. Which is a little annoying. I think I'm just going to do this top row and work our way down. She's kind of got a row of 5 there at the top. So I'm sure it's the same with these guys, and they're all in. I think one of them, if not both of them, are online. So they're not even here. And we'd rather not do any online instruction, but just have too many students. Which I guess is a good problem to have, but relatively speaking, one of the things that universities are worried about is a collapse in student population, which may come as a result of some people. I think they're worried about the online education being too good, but I think it's going to be more a result of a drop in population. That's incoming in a lot of places, including here. And so they're worried about what are they going to do for resources if there's no students, or very few students, or a smaller number that they have to kind of argue with over other places. Which is a real thing to consider, right? Is you're looking at some countries like, say, Korea or Japan, or Russia, places like that, where having significant drops in populations, because people aren't having families. So there's a good spot here for this one. I mean, I'm single, and one of the things that's been driving the huge leap in technology and innovation over the last 200 years has been that population explosion. more people doing more stuff, and what happens to that level of innovation when that disappears. So, what are people going to do? So there's been concerns about losing out on resources and things as population increases, but we've also made the lifestyles of kind of the elderly, especially in Western countries, even in the United States, even dependent on that younger generation to pay for their retirement. And what happens when there's nobody left to pay for that? To provide, even if they're not providing money, providing services or health care or other things, and that's not going to be a short-term problem. The problem's going to extend over probably 100 years. At the very least, while the population kind of settles into a new normal, if it does that. Whatever that means. So I don't know. It's especially with people living so long. It's like the joke. The historical joke. At least in the United States, is the first person to get her Social Security as like part of her permanent paycheck. When she retired, she paid into it, and then 2 weeks later she retired, and I think she received payments for like 30 years or something. But she was the very, very first one that took to take advantage of it. And that's not sustainable in the least. And other countries have far more generous and expensive social systems like that rely on new people to fuel those payments. So it's hard to say what the ultimate solution will be. There's that top row. We'll go ahead and ink them in and see where we're at. But it's definitely it's a lot of people try to be pretty glib about it, but I really think it's a pretty big deal. So yeah, we'll see what the powers that be decide. They don't check with me very often. don't have Biden ringing my phone over the last few years for some reason. I don't know why. They don't check with me. So maybe I need to kind of reconsider my voice a little bit. It's interesting. I've seen a lot of people making fun of Zuckerberg over the last day because he announced that they're basically scrapping their Meta fact-checking organization and support that they've had for. I think it really got going during the end of the Trump administration as a result of COVID and some of the election stuff that was going on. In favor of more of a community notes style system that's like on Twitter, which I actually really like the Twitter community notes, because the other platforms what actually Twitter used to do is you just didn't see the post, like it just never came up. And what I like about the community notes one is like it actually gives you context, so you might have heard this thing somewhere else, and maybe you found it, credible based off of, whatever, reasons, whether they're political biases or past experience, or you just, you saw it, so you just assumed something was correct somewhere else, and then you see it gets blocked somewhere rather than dealt with in a informative way. And what I like about the community notes one is you actually learn what the truth is, because it's put together by a variety of people who come to a consensus about something, even if they don't agree about many things. The people kind of come together in an agreement about what the actual history is. So like there was a video I saw there on Twitter yesterday of a guy rescuing a rabbit during the wildfire. And I'm like, oh, isn't that nice? And the community notes pointed out that the video was from 2017, not the recent fire. And that was, informative, right? Still nice of the guy to rescue the rabbit and everything, but allowed you to see how the person who put up the post was using it to manipulate the audience rather than it just not appearing. Which I think is, my opinion, is a much better approach. Because I think anytime you disappear information, it's very suspicious. Especially when it was coming from certain kinds of groups. And rather than, from what, the truth was. So people that are kind of professional fact checkers, they tend to go into that because they have a particular point of view that they want to push, and so they'll join these organizations to manipulate them. And so if you centralize your truth that way, it can lead to all kinds of misinformation that they claim to want to prevent. So I definitely prefer that kind of system that they have there on Twitter, where the community notes are there. At least the way I perceive it. At least maybe there's an important aspect that I'm not considering, but I figure there's enough, know-it-all Karens and Kyles in the world to, fuel these community notes things. People can sit there and say, well, actually, a lot. So yeah, so I always get concerned when people are like, no one should have access to that information. Like, it's really bad. Like, well, it's better to have like someone tell you what's really going on. It's like there's I forget the name of the guy. Yeah, exactly. But I forget the name of the guy. He has that kind of ancient America, whatever series on Netflix. It's a quote unquote documentary series. He had like these ancient civilization things he did a few years ago. I watched it originally because I've seen him on other places talking about this idea of this ancient civilization. And some of the things are kind of interesting. It's like, oh wow, maybe there was water erosion on the Sphinx because it's older than we think. That kind of thing. And but I don't know that Netflix should be paying him a ton of money to do these documentaries, but they are, because he was showing off these interesting places. Some of them I'd never heard of before. When I was watching, I was like, yeah, there's something odd, that there's obviously to me that there was like things that were wrong with his argument when I was watching it. And I'm not an expert in archaeology at all, but I was watching like, well, what about this or what about that? And I can't remember the guy's name. He's kind of like this proponent of this theory that there was this ancient civilization based around Atlantis, and they traveled the world and gave everybody their kind of technology, and so that's why everyone was building pyramids the same way and a bunch of other things. And it turns out that obviously that's not correct. People built pyramids because they were trying to build things high and taller, and that's kind of a default engineering solution for a lot of people. But he's presenting all these kind of different locations that claim to be, these potentially interesting archaeology areas. Like there's this kind of circular structure out in Africa of circles that compress in on each other. And he thinks that's where Atlantis was, because of a bunch of different things that he claims to be accurate. But anyway, I was like, that seems a little odd. Or there was one place he was like, look at how they carved these stones into perfect hexagons and that sort of thing. I'm like, well, those aren't actually stones, like carved stones. Those are what's the word? It's a naturally occurring formation when there's volcanic activity. I forget what the name of them is, but they form these hexagonal kind of towers because of the way the rock kind of splits when it cools, makes these hexagonal structures. But like that sort of thing was pretty obvious to me. And so when kind of searching online just to see what other people had to say, and I found this guy whose background is in archaeology and history. He's a younger guy, but he put together this kind of multi-hour series going through all of this guy's material and pointing out that in fact he claimed like people were ignoring these issues or didn't know about them or didn't understand them, and he had this unique knowledge, which is another kind of red flag for me, is people that claim to have like special insight that others don't have. That's usually a pretty good red flag for something not being what it seems. Anyway, this guy went through it. He just kind of went through every single location and claim and debunked all of it, like, pretty thoroughly. So, and I noticed there were things wrong just because of some of the things I know, but obviously I don't know everything. But I could tell that there was like something amiss. And this guy, he's just some guy. I think he's up in New Hampshire. And he's a TikTok, YouTube personality. And But he's just saying like, here's where this thing happened. I talked to this professor over here, and this is what they have to say. They're an expert, or this person appeared on the show, and he didn't realize what the show was, and wasn't paying that much attention to it, and was taken out of context in this way, and this is what he has to say, and interviews him there, and or it goes over what the location is. Like one of the examples they had was in the documentary series was like a series of well, not a series, but like this location that looks like a giant kind of almost a megalithic road that's under the water along the shore. And you kind of look at it, and it's like this super compact rock. It looks like cement or something. It has an even depth. And, it looks like, it could be, the leftovers of a road. And my question always with that one, because I think I've heard about that one before, was where's that road going? Because it's really short. Like it's this giant wide road, right, theoretically, but it's not going anywhere. It's just kind of right there. And the documentary guy, he goes underwater and looks at it, and he's like pointing out how there's this different material under it, so it looks like this was built on top of something and all of that. And it turns out what it really is it's a conglomeration rock, and they can actually occur quite quickly the way that they're compacted down. It basically takes whatever's on the shore or near the shore, underwater or whatever, and the waves push it down and compress it into this kind of conglomeration. And it's a really well understood phenomenon that happens. It's not at all vague, and a quick search would have answered that question for this ancient researcher, but didn't fit into his narrative, so he was unable to see it. It's like he might be 100% sincere, because he's got this narrative about these Atlanteans transferring knowledge to the world. And he might believe it, I don't know. But you also, if you're unwilling to consider, the truth of the situation, then that kind of says a lot about you and kind of what you're about. What are we doing for time? 1 o'clock, 1 hour, 1 minute, 2 minutes. So we'll finish up these last little gestural drawings here, and then that'll be it. Yeah, so definitely, I definitely fall into the category of I would call skeptic, and skeptical of myself too. So I don't assume that my assumptions are all very good. And partially how I've been wrong about things. Like I was in here, I think, talking about Loomis the other day, the things that he gets wrong, and that if you're not aware that he's getting these things wrong, can lead you down an incorrect path. As useful as most of his information is, he's just some guy who wrote a book who did illustrations, back in the 30s and 40s, and I think a little into the 50s. It wasn't Buddha or anything. So, I think those are kind of things to consider. One of the things that I kind of noticed too is he took the idea that this documentary guy, I can't remember his name, I want to say it's something Graham or Graham something, but he took this idea that he was, not being argued with in good faith by this one Egyptian professor in Egypt for ancient Egyptian studies as proof that he was correct. When someone can be wrong, and that doesn't necessarily mean someone's having a good faith argument with them. Doesn't make him any more right. Both people could be wrong about how they're approaching something. So, there's always that kind of thing. Yeah, so a lot of wacky stuff, but I think crowdsourcing some of this stuff is really helpful in terms of that is to say, exposing what's true rather than shutting someone down. Like I don't know that, like I said, I don't know that Netflix should necessarily pay for him to do these series. I might disagree with that. I might say, well, if he's clearly wrong about everything he's saying, then at least it should be listed as fiction. But then you got the History Channel doing all their nonsense. They're no longer a channel interested in history. There's a lot more money, on ancient aliens and a bunch of other nonsense. But I wouldn't necessarily shut them down. I just don't look at them. I definitely advocate for people to work on their debunking efforts for sure. So we'll see. Oh, we got turn that over here. Got the last little drawing here. It's been on for a little over an hour. And we'll continue with this tomorrow. Hopefully, fill out that. Finish off this page at the very least. But we are coming up on the end of the study of this book, so it's a slow coming to an end. But we've got probably another week left in here. do think these kind of superhero dinosaurs are a little goofy. I mean, they're entertaining, sure, but it's not my favorite concept here. I'd much rather see her, do her kind of invented aliens and things like that, or chimeras, over the superhero thing. Anyway, it has a certain kind of, I guess, novelty to it, but it's not my my thing. I think there's a Tyrannosaurus Hulk in here eventually. It says, yeah, it's funny, but it's like, eh. Alright, so that's first row of page 153. So today is 25. We'll start off with the right number there this time. January 09. We are cranking away into the new year. So there's our little session from today. Get my little nib all cleaned off and shut up my jar and put it in a more secure spot so I don't spill it. There was a week where I was like knocking over my ink jar every day, which was, not optimal. But thanks for everybody that came in. I appreciate it, and see you later.